My grandfather wasn't a wealthy man. He worked construction for 43 years, saved every penny he could, and lived in the same small house until the day he died. But when he passed last spring, he left me something precious, $38,000. Not millions, not enough to quit my job, but enough to build a future. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, tears streaming down my face as I held the check. Grandpa had written a letter to go with it. In his shaky handwriting, he'd said, "Sarah, use this wisely. Build something beautiful with your life." I clutched that letter like a lifeline, knowing he'd worked overtime shifts and skipped vacations. To save every dollar of that inheritance, my husband Mark sat beside me, rubbing my shoulder as I cried. "He loved you so much," he whispered. "He'd want you to be happy with this." I believed him. I trusted him. That was my first mistake. Let's put it in a joint account 3 days after I deposited the check. Mark brought up the joint account idea. Over dinner, we were eating takeout Chinese food at our tiny kitchen table, and he seemed nervous, picking at his lo mein instead of eating. "You know," he said carefully, "maybe we should put your inheritance in our joint account. It would help build trust between us, show we're really partners in this marriage." I looked up from my sweet and sour chicken, surprised. We'd been married for 2 years, but we'd always kept our finances somewhat separate. Had my checking account, he had his, and we split bills down the middle. The joint account existed but barely had a few $100s in it. "I don't know," I said slowly. "This money is special. It's from Grandpa." Mark reached across the table and took my hand. "It's exactly why we should do this together. Sarah, I love you. Your grandfather's gift isn't just yours, it's ours. It's for our future." The way he said it made my heart flutter. Here was my husband wanting to build something together with the money Grandpa had left me. It felt romantic, like a symbol of our commitment to each other. "'Kay," I said, squeezing his hand. "Let's do it." That night, I transferred the entire $38,000 into our joint account. Mark watched over my shoulder as I typed in the numbers, and when the transfer went through, he kissed my cheek. "This is going to change everything for us," he said. "I promise I'll protect this money like it's my own." I should have paid attention to those exact words. Like it's my own, not like it's ours. Like it's his. Our plans for that money for weeks. After the transfer, we made beautiful plans. We'd spread out on the living room floor with notebooks and calculators, dreaming about our future. The money would go toward IVF treatments. We'd been trying to get pregnant for 8 months with no success. Maybe there'd be enough left for a down payment on a small house. Definitely enough to fix the leaking roof in our apartment. "We could start trying treatments as early as next month," I said one evening, highlighting fertility clinic information. I'd printed out. Dr. Martinez said it usually takes 3 to 4 cycles. Mark nodded, but he seemed distracted, scrolling through his phone instead of looking at the brochures. "Yeah, sounds good. We have time to figure it out." I thought he was just being cautious, wanting to research our options thoroughly. Now I realize he was already planning something else entirely. We talked about taking a vacation, to maybe somewhere warm where we could relax and reconnect. Mark suggested Hawaii, and I started pricing flights. "We could go in the fall," I said excitedly. "After the roof is fixed and before we start the fertility treatments." "Maybe," he said, not looking up from his phone. "Let's see how things go." Every conversation about the money became vague like that. Every plan became a maybe or we'll see. I started feeling like I was planning our future alone. Subtle red flags. I ignored the first red flag was so small, I almost missed it. About 3 weeks after we'd opened the joint account, I mentioned wanting to check the balance to see if we'd earned any interest. "I'll check it later," Mark said quickly. "I'm already logged in on my phone." When I asked again the next day, he said he'd forgotten. When I brought it up a third time, he got irritated. "Sarah, why do you need to check it every day? The money's not going anywhere, but I wasn't checking it every day. I'd asked 3 times in 2 weeks. Its reaction felt wrong, defensive in a way that made my stomach twist. Then there were the phone calls. Mark started getting calls he'd take in the other room. When I'd ask who it was, he'd say work stuff or my mom. But I'd heard him talking to his mom plenty of times. And this voice was different, softer, more familiar. He also started working late more often. Big project at the office, he'd say, coming home at 9 or 10 at night. But when I called, his work number one evening to ask if he wanted me to save dinner. His coworker said he'd left at 5-30. The biggest red flag was how he changed whenever I brought up the money. We'd be having a normal conversation, laughing about something on TV or planning our weekend. And the moment I mentioned the inheritance or our future plans, he'd go quiet. His shoulders would tense. He'd find an excuse to leave the room. "You okay?" I asked one night after he'd walked away mid-conversation about baby names. "You seem stressed." "I'm fine," he said, not looking at me, "just tired. Work has been crazy." But I could see it in his eyes. He was hiding something. I just never imagined it would be this. I logged in and froze October 15th. I'll never forget that date. Was sitting at my desk during my lunch break, trying to eat a sandwich while coordinating with our contractor about the roof repair. He needed a deposit $1,500, and I needed to transfer it from our joint account. I pulled up the bank website on my computer and entered our login information. The page loaded and I clicked on the joint account balance. What I saw made my sandwich fall from my hands onto my keyboard. Balance, $847.23. I stared at the screen, certain I'd made a mistake. Maybe I'd clicked on the wrong account. Maybe the website was glitching. I refreshed the page, logged out, and logged back in. The number didn't change. My hands were shaking as I clicked on the transaction history. There it was, clear as day, October 10th, 5 days ago. A transfer of $37,152.77 to an account I didn't recognize. The memo line read, "Emergency assistance." I felt like I was going to throw up. $37,000 gone, just like that. A transfer to his ex-Wi-Fi called the bank immediately, my voice shaking as I asked the representative to confirm the transaction. She read me the details. The money had been transferred to an account belonging to Jessica Chen, Mark's ex-wife. Jessica, the woman he'd been married to for 3 years before we met. The woman he claimed he never talked to anymore, who lived across the country in Seattle. The woman who was apparently getting emergency assistance with my grandfather's money. I hung up the phone and sat in my cubicle, staring at the computer screen. My coworkers were chatting around me, eating their lunches, talking about weekend plans. Normal life was happening everywhere except in my world, which had just collapsed. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with questions. Why Jessica? Now, why hadn't he asked me first? The money was supposed to be for our future, for IVF treatments and a house and fixing our roof. Instead, it was sitting in his ex-wife's bank account. When I walked into our apartment, Mark was sitting on the couch watching TV like nothing had happened. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, babe, how was work?" I stood in the doorway studying his face. He looked completely normal, relaxed, like he hadn't just stolen $37,000 from his wife. "Mark," I said quietly, "we need to talk. She's family too." He didn't even try to lie. When I showed him the bank statement on my phone, he just nodded and said, "Yeah, I was going to tell you about that." "If you were going to tell me." I couldn't believe how calm he sounded. "If you transferred my inheritance to your ex-wife without asking me and you were going to tell me." Mark turned off the TV and faced me. "Sarah, it wasn't like that. Jessica called me crying. She's in a really bad place right now. She lost her job, she's about to be evicted, and she has nowhere else to turn. So you gave her my grandfather's money." "I gave her our money," he corrected. "The money in our joint account. And it's not gone forever. It's a loan. She'll pay it back when she gets back on her feet." I felt like I was talking to a stranger. "Mark, that money was for IVF, for our house, for our future." He shrugged. actually shrugged. Money comes and goes, Sarah. Jessica is family too. She was my wife for 3 years. I couldn't just let her become homeless. She's not your wife anymore. I am. I know that, he said, but his voice suggested otherwise. Look, I know you're upset, but you're overreacting. This is what people do for each other. It's called compassion. Overreacting. He'd given away $37,000 of my inheritance without asking me, and I was overreacting. His smirk like I'd overreacted. Worst part wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the smirk on his face when he called me too emotional. Like I was some hysterical woman who couldn't understand the complexities of adult relationships. You're being dramatic, he said, actually rolling his eyes. Jessica and I have history. We care about each other. That doesn't mean I don't love you. But you love her enough to give her my inheritance without asking me. It's not your inheritance anymore, Sarah. It's our money. And I made a decision about our money to help someone who needed it. I stared at him, this man I'd married, this man I'd trusted with my most precious gift from my grandfather. He was talking about Jessica with such tenderness, such protectiveness. When was the last time he'd talked about me that way? Did you ever stop talking to her? I asked quietly. For the first time, he looked uncomfortable. What do you mean? Have you been in contact with Jessica this whole time? All those late nights, all those phone calls you took in the other room? Mark shifted on the couch. We talk sometimes. She's going through a hard time with the divorce and everything. She's been divorced from you for 4 years. It's complicated. Sarah, you wouldn't understand. And there it was. The final insult. Not only had he betrayed me, not only had he stolen from me, but now I was too stupid to understand the situation. I looked at his face, really looked at it. The slight smirk around his mouth, the way his eyes avoided mine, the complete lack of remorse or apology. This wasn't the man I'd married. Or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. You're right, I said finally. I don't understand, but I'm about to. I sat quietly and called the bank. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw things or slam doors. Instead, I did something that would terrify Mark much more than any emotional outburst ever could. I smiled. Okay, I said calmly. I understand. Now, you're right, it's complicated, and I was overreacting. Mark looked surprised but relieved. Really? You're not mad anymore? I'm not mad, I said, which was technically true. I was far beyond mad. I was strategically furious. I'm going to make some tea. Do you want some? While the water boiled, I stepped into the bedroom and called the bank. My voice was steady, professional, completely controlled. This is Sarah. Mitchell calling about the joint account I share with my husband. I need to report unauthorized transactions and freeze the account immediately. The customer service representative was helpful and efficient. Within 30 minutes, the account was frozen pending an investigation. Mark's debit card would be declined, his checks would bounce. Any automatic payments would fail. Is there anything else I can help you with today? She asked. Actually, yes. So I'd like to open a new individual account and transfer my portion of the joint account funds to it. How much would you like to transfer? I thought about the $847.23 that remained after Mark's generous gift to his ex-wife. I thought about my grandfather working overtime shifts to save every penny. I thought about Mark's smirk when he called me too emotional. I'd like to transfer $847.06, I said. Leave exactly 17 cents in the joint account. I transferred everything except 17 cents. The transfer took 5 minutes. 5 minutes to move every dollar Mark had left me after his betrayal. 5 minutes to leave him with less than the cost of a candy bar. I watched the numbers change on my phone screen. New account balance, $847.06. Joint account balance, $0.17. It was perfect. Not zero, which might have looked like a mistake. Not a round number, which might have seemed intentional. Just 17 cents, enough to keep the account open. Enough to make him realize exactly how much he'd left me with. Enough to make him understand that this was deliberate. I walked back to the living room, where Mark was still watching TV. He looked up as I entered, and I smiled at him again. That same calm, understanding smile. "The tea's ready," I said. I made chamomile. It's supposed to be calming. We sat on the couch together, sipping our tea in comfortable silence. Mark even reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you understand." He said, "I was worried you'd stay mad about this." "Oh, I understand completely now," I said. "Everything is very clear." I left a note he wouldn't forget that night. After Mark fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a note. I rewrote it 3 times, making sure every word was perfect. It needed to be clear, devastating, and impossible to misinterpret. Finally, I settled on something simple. "Mark, I checked the joint account today. It's interesting to see how much you value your current wife versus your ex-wife. Since you've chosen to support her instead of me, I've chosen to support myself instead of you. Check the account balance. You'll find exactly what you left me after your loan to Jessica. I've transferred my portion to a new account. Don't worry about the bills this month. I'm sure your new wife can help you pay them. I'll be in touch about divorce proceedings. SARAHPS. Tell Jessica I said congratulations on the windfall." Folded the note and put it on the refrigerator, held in place by a magnet from our honeymoon in Niagara Falls. The irony wasn't lost on me. Packed. My bags in Silent Side didn't pack everything that night. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I moved systematically, taking only what I needed immediately. A week's worth of clothes, my laptop, important documents, and the framed photo of my grandfather that Mark had always hated. I'd rented a storage unit that afternoon, one of those places that stays open 24 hours. I'd also booked a room at an extended stay hotel across town, paying for 2 weeks in advance with my credit card. Over the next few days, I would come back when Mark was at work and slowly move my belongings, piece by piece. I would extract my life from the apartment we'd shared, leaving behind only the things that were truly his or that. I couldn't bear to keep. The hardest thing to pack was my wedding dress. It hung in the back of our closet, carefully preserved in a garment bag. I'd loved that dress, loved the way I felt wearing it, loved the hope it represented. Now it just looked like expensive fabric that had been worn to a very expensive lie. I folded it carefully and put it in a box. Maybe I'd donate it. Maybe I'd burn it. Maybe I'd keep it as a reminder. I'd decide later. As I carried the last box to my car, I looked back at the apartment one more time. It's the place where I'd been happy, where I'd planned my future, where I'd trusted someone who didn't deserve it. In 12 hours, Mark would wake up and discover what trust really meant. I drove away at 2:47 a.m., leaving him sleeping peacefully next to the empty space where his wife used to be. His panic hit fast. The first call came at 6:23 a.m., then 6:31, then 6:35. By 7 o'clock, I had 14 missed calls from Mark. I didn't answer any of them. I was sitting in a coffee shop near my hotel, eating a blueberry muffin and reading the news on my phone like a normal person starting a normal day. My phone kept buzzing with calls and texts, but I ignored them all. I had nowhere to be, no one to answer to, and for the first time in months, I felt completely peaceful. The texts started getting frantic around 8 o'clock. "Sarah, where are you? The account is frozen. What happened? Call me, this isn't. Funny, I went to the bank. They said you froze everything. What did you do? Sarah, I'm serious. Call me right now." I took a screenshot of each message and saved them to a folder on my phone. Evidence, not for any legal proceeding, but for my own satisfaction. I wanted to remember how panicked he sounded when he realized what he'd done. Around 10 o'clock, he started calling my work. My assistant, Jennifer, told me he'd called 3 times asking to speak to me urgently. "Should I put him through?" she asked. "No," I said calmly. "If he calls again, tell him I'm unavailable and take a message." He called 6 more times that day. Jennifer dutifully took messages. Your husband called again. He says it's an emergency. Each time I thanked her and went back to my work. It felt powerful. Being unavailable to someone who had made me feel so small. His ex didn't want him, just the cash though. Really delicious part came 3 days later. Mark's panic had evolved into anger, and his messages had turned nasty. He was calling me selfish, crazy, vindictive. He was threatening to contest our joint account to sue me, to make me pay for stealing his money. But then, on Thursday afternoon, something changed. The messages stopped being angry and started being desperate. Sarah, I need to talk to you. Something happened with Jessica. I was curious despite myself. I waited 2 hours before texting back. What happened? His response came immediately. She blocked me. She took the money and blocked me on everything. I can't reach her. I actually laughed out loud. I was sitting in my hotel room eating takeout Thai food and watching Netflix. And I laughed until my sides hurt. Mark had given my grandfather's money to his ex-wife, thinking it would somehow rebuild their relationship. Instead, Jessica had taken the cash and disappeared. She'd gotten what she wanted and cut off all contact with the man who'd given it to her. I'm sorry to hear that. I texted back. That must be very disappointing. Sarah, I made a mistake. I can see that now. But we can fix this. We can work through this. I don't think we can. Please, I love you. I choose you. I want to be with you. I stared at that message for a long time. He chose me. After giving away my inheritance to his ex-wife, after she'd taken the money and blocked him, after he'd realized she didn't want him back, now he chose me. I didn't respond. He couldn't make rent that month. November 1st was rent day. Our apartment cost $1,847 a month, and Mark's half was due. Normally, he would have paid it from the joint account. But the joint account had been frozen and contained exactly 17 cents. I knew he was in trouble. When he called from his mother's phone, Sarah, it's me. I know you're not taking my calls, but I need help. I can't make rent this month. The landlord is threatening to evict me. Let him talk for a while, explaining his situation. His personal checking account didn't have enough to cover rent. His credit cards were maxed out. He'd asked his friends for loans, but nobody had that kind of money available. I know I messed up, he said. I know I hurt you. But I can't become homeless over this. Please, Sarah, I'm begging you. When he finished, I was quiet for a long moment. Then I said, Mark, I want to help you understand something. Check the balance in our joint account. What, Sarah? There's no money in there. You froze it. I didn't freeze your access to the money, Mark. I just froze new transactions. You can still check the balance. Go ahead. I heard him tapping on his phone, probably logging into the bank app. Then I heard the exact moment he saw the 17 cents. Oh my God, he whispered. That's what you left me, I said calmly. You gave my inheritance to your ex-wife without asking me. That's what I had left. 17 cents. So now you know exactly how it feels. I hung up and blocked his mother's number too. His mom called me selfish. Mark's mother, Patricia, called me from her landline 2 days later. I'd always liked Patricia, and I think she'd like me too. She was a retired teacher, a practical woman who'd raised 4 children on her own after her husband died young. Sarah, honey, I need to talk to you about Mark. Hi, Patricia. How are you? I'm worried, sweetie. Mark told me what happened with the money, and I think there's been a misunderstanding. I sat down on my hotel room bed. What kind of misunderstanding? Well, he said you froze the account and took all the money because he helped his ex-wife. But that doesn't sound like you, Sarah. You're such a generous person. Patricia's voice was gentle, motherly. She was trying to fix things, to smooth over the conflict like she'd probably done 1,000 times when Mark was a child. Patricia, did Mark tell you how much money he gave to Jessica? He said it was a loan to help her with some bills. Was $37,000. My inheritance from my grandfather. He transferred it without asking me or telling me. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. 37,000. Patricia's voice was smaller now. Yes. And when I asked him about it, he said I was overreacting and that Jessica was family too. Another silence. Then, oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was that much. I appreciate that, Patricia, I really do. But I need you to understand something. I'm not angry because Mark helped someone in need. I'm angry because he betrayed my trust, stole my inheritance, and chose his ex-wife over me. Then he called me selfish for protecting what little money he left me. You're right, she said quietly. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry for calling you selfish. Didn't understand the situation. I know you didn't. Mark has a way of presenting things that makes him look like the victim. He's done that since he was a child, Patricia admitted. I kept hoping he'd grow out of it. We talked for another 20 minutes. Patricia told me she'd raised Mark to be better than this, that she was disappointed in him, that she understood why I'd left. She asked if there was anything she could do to help me, and I told her I appreciated the offer, but I was fine. I hope you find someone who deserves you, she said before we hung up. I hope so too, Patricia. Thank you for calling. Was the last time I spoke to anyone from Mark's family. I rented a studio, small, but mine after 2 weeks in the extended stay hotel. I found a studio apartment in a complex across town. It was small, just 600 square feet, but it had huge windows, hardwood floors, and a kitchen that was actually bigger than the one I'd shared with Mark. The rent was $980 a month, manageable on my salary. Most importantly, it was mine. My name on the lease, my security deposit, my key. No joint accounts, no shared decisions, no one else's ex-wife to worry. ABOUT, I signed the lease on a Thursday and moved in on Saturday. I didn't have much. Most of my furniture had been left behind in the apartment with Mark. But I had my clothes, my books, my laptop, and the framed photo of my grandfather that I placed on the windowsill where it would catch the morning light. The first night in my new apartment, I sat on the floor eating pizza and making lists. What did I need? What did I want? What kind of life was I going to build for myself? I'd never lived alone before. I'd gone from my parents' house to college dorms to apartments with roommates to living with Mark. At 31 years old, was experiencing independence for the first time. It was terrifying and exhilarating. I used what was left to start over. The $847.06 I'd transferred from the joint account wasn't much, but it was enough to start something new. I'd been dreaming about starting a custom embroidery business for years, but there had always been a reason to wait. Mark thought it was impractical. We needed the money for other things. It was too risky now. Sitting in my empty studio apartment, I realized those had all been excuses. The real reason I'd never started the business was because I'd been afraid to try. I used $300 to buy a professional quality embroidery machine online. I spent another $200 on supplies, thread, stabilizer, blanks, hoops. The rest went toward setting up a simple website and ordering business cards. Sarah's Custom Stitches. That's what I called it. Simple, direct, personal. I started small, advertising on social media and taking orders from friends. Baby blankets with names. Wedding. Handkerchiefs with dates. Sports team logos on hats. Each piece was careful, precise. Made with the attention to detail my grandfather had taught me when I was a child. The first month, I made $150. The second month, $400. By the third month, I was making almost $800 and had a waiting list of customers. People loved the personal touch. The fact that each piece was made specifically for them. More importantly, I loved it. Every stitch was a choice I made. Every design was something I created. Every customer was someone I'd helped mark an important moment in their life. He still tries to contact me. Mark never stopped trying to reach me. He created new email addresses. When I blocked his old ones, he sent messages through social media from fake accounts. He had friends call me, pretending to be interested in my embroidery business, but really trying to get me to talk about him. The messages evolved over time. First, they were angry, then desperate, then manipulative, then angry again. Finally, they became nostalgic, trying to remind me of good times we'd shared. "Remember our first Christmas together?" he wrote in one email. "You made me that scarf with the crooked stitches, and I told you it was perfect. Still have it. I still think about that Christmas. I did remember." I'd been so nervous about giving him something handmade, worried he'd think it was cheap or amateur. When he'd said it was perfect, I'd felt like I could create anything. Now I realized he'd probably been lying then too. I saved all his messages in a folder on my computer. It's the same way I'd saved his frantic texts that first day. It's not because I missed him or wanted to respond, but because I wanted to remember who he really was. The next time I was tempted to trust someone who didn't deserve it, I could read those messages and remember what betrayal looked like. The last message I received from him was on our wedding anniversary. Just 2 words. "I'm sorry." I deleted it without responding. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry wasn't the point. The point was that I'd built a life without him, and it was better than any life I'd ever imagined with him. Final words to the cameras. You're watching this video, maybe you're going through something similar. Maybe someone you trusted has betrayed you, stolen from you, chosen someone else over you. Maybe you're sitting there wondering if you're overreacting, if you're being too emotional, if you should just forgive and move on. Let me tell you something, you're not overreacting. Your feelings are valid. Your trust was worth something, and when someone breaks it, they don't get to tell you how to respond. Mark gave Jessica my inheritance, $37,000 that my grandfather had saved for me. That was supposed to build my future. He did it without asking, without telling me, without caring how I'd feel about it. When I confronted him, he shrugged and said she was family too. So I showed him what family really means. I protected myself the same way he'd protected her. One chose myself the same way he'd chosen her. I left him with exactly what he'd left me, almost nothing. People ask me if I regret it, if I think I went too far. If I miss being married, I don't regret it. I didn't go far enough. And I don't miss being married to someone who didn't respect me. I miss being married to someone who would have asked me before giving away my inheritance. I miss being married to someone who would have chosen me over his ex-wife. I miss being married to someone who existed only in my imagination. The real Mark. The one who smiled when he called me too emotional. The one who gave away my grandfather's money without a thought. I don't miss him at all. My life now is smaller in some ways. I have a studio apartment instead of a 2-bedroom. I eat dinner alone most nights. I don't have someone to share my daily victories and frustrations with, but my life is also bigger. I have a business I built from nothing. I have friends who respect me. I have a future that belongs entirely to me. I have the peace that comes from knowing I'll never again wake up to discover that someone I trusted has betrayed me. Mark still tries to contact me sometimes. He sends emails full of apologies and promises to change. He leaves gifts at my door. He tells our mutual friends that he's learned from his mistakes and wants another chance. But I've learned something too. I've learned that some mistakes can't be fixed. Some trust can't be rebuilt, and some people don't deserve second chances. He gave Jessica my inheritance. I gave him the consequences. And I've never been happier. Sarah's Custom Stitches is still growing. If you're interested in custom embroidery work, you can find me on Instagram at Sarah's Custom Stitch. Thanks for listening to my story.